Hello everybody, and it's a big welcome from me and from Dimitri to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson. I hope that not too much goes wrong today, that the stream doesn't cut like last week, and also that my voice holds out. I've had COVID for the last week or so, and I'm recovering now, but as you can probably hear, I'm struggling a bit with my voice. So I'm going to do my best to get through this hopefully relatively short lesson and come out of it in something other than just a ball of cough and splutter. Dimitri's quite woozy, which is quite good for live streaming. I shouldn't be too woozy though, I need to concentrate. Someone says, speak louder. Can you not hear me? Can you not hear me? I can't talk too much more loudly or I will lose my voice. Well done to Flame Gaming, who passed their 11 plus. Many congratulations, and as always, I'm delighted when people who've already done their exams come back to join these lessons, because I guess it suggests that you still feel there's something useful to be got out of them. Okay, Dimitri's getting a bit wriggly. Let's put Dimitri down and let's get started. Don't forget that you can, of course, send me a piece of work for completely free marking. If you've never sent me a piece of work for marking before, it could be a bit of comprehension or a short piece of writing. Have a look at the link in the video description if you want to find out how to do that. It's going to be a lot of coughing, I'm sorry, but I reckon it's better that I do this with coughing than that I don't do this at all. I should say, by the way, there's no lesson next week because I'm away, but we'll be back as normal the week after that. Okay, Dimitri wants to be let out. Oh no, he's going to go and sit on the bed, that's fine. So he's going to go and sit on the bed behind the green screen. So I will get on with this lesson. Right, so today we are looking at some difficult poetry comprehension in which you have to explain the meaning of some quotations. This is based on the style of the St Olave's Grammar School paper. I know that this year the St Olave's exam is gone, it's been and gone, but this will be useful for people preparing for next year's exam. And of course the video will stay up on the channel and help people over the next year and hopefully even the coming years if I get through it in one piece. So here we have the poem that we're looking at this week up in the corner there, up there. And here we have, of course, a space in which I'm going to be doing some writing. Oh, that's frozen. Wonderful. Isn't that brilliant? Right, I'm going to have to refresh this view so that we can actually see what I'm doing. So bear with me a second. I'm just going to mess around. You're probably going to see my face, and then it's going to go back to being that, and hopefully that's going to work now. Work, work, work. Yes, it works. Good. Excellent. Good. That's the first technical hitch overcome. So when you have to explain what's meant by a quotation, we've got two quotations to look at today. One of the important things that you need to understand is that you need to understand much more than just the quotation in front of you. So explaining what this quotation means is not a matter of translating the words into plain English. That's part of it, but it isn't by any means the whole task. You have to understand what this quotation means in the context of the poem as a whole. And that means that you need to understand the whole poem. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is why I've chosen a very short poem, a very famous poem I should add, is we're going to read through the whole thing, work out what it means, and then explain each of these two quotations that we got to deal with in the context of the poem. So let's do that. Wonderful to see more and more people turning up. Fantastic. For new people here, I've got COVID, although it's going away, so I'm struggling a little bit with my voice. So I apologise if I'm a little bit quiet. In fact, I'm going to move the microphone a little bit nearer. There we are. Okay, the microphone's a bit nearer. That should help. And if I cough, I apologise for that. If I have to stop because I just can't talk anymore, I apologise in advance, but hopefully that won't happen. Okay, wonderful to see you, Legend, who says, I love your videos. I love having you here. Shivani says very, very gnomically, no person owns an isle. That is actually untrue. There are various people, the Richard Bransons of this world, who own islands, but I don't. Probably none of you do, although maybe there's someone out there who owns an island. Let me know in the comments if you do. I would love to be your friend. Only joking. Right. Okay, I have some lovely ideas. Reasons to be cheerful says, no one can survive by themselves. We all need each other. You're already getting to grips with this poem. Fantastic. Let's do that together. No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thine own or of thine friends were, what were washed away. Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. And there's that definition I put at the bottom. Tolls, it means rings slowly and repeatedly. So it's talking about a church bell ringing out dong, 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 in the way that we traditionally announce a death in the parish. So this is about hearing the bells of the church ringing and thinking, who just died? And this poem is kind of a meditation on that idea, on that scenario. So let's go through and think about it. No man is an island entire of itself. So what would it mean if we were all islands? We'd all be little sort of, entities separated from each other by the ocean. But this says that we aren't like that. Each man means person here. We're not talking about male people. It's just an old-fashioned way of saying person. Each person is a piece of the continent, so like Europe or Asia, which of course really join into one continent, Africa, America, so on. A part of the main. What's the main? It means the main land, the whole. So we aren't islands, we're parts of the continent. If a clod, what's a clod? A little bit of earth, a little bit of soil, be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. So if you imagine that we are all Europe and one little bit of earth is washed away into the ocean, you might say, well, that's just a tiny thing, it happens all the time, what does it matter? To which the poet might say, well, that's what a lot of people think about people dying. People are dying all the time, we don't really care about it. But maybe we should. Because every person's life is part of what makes us people, a society, maybe. But he says something more than that. He's saying a clod of earth being washed away makes Europe less, just as much as if a whole promontory, so a whole great big bit of land sticking out into the sea was washed away. A little clod being washed away is just as meaningful, it's saying. So this seems to be suggesting that one person dying is just as big a tragedy as thousands of people dying, that you can't just weigh up the numbers like that. As well as if a manor of thine own or of thine friends were. So one clod of earth being washed away is just as meaningful as if a whole peninsula, a whole bit of land sticking to the sea were washed away. It's just as meaningful as if your house or your friend's house was washed away. It shouldn't matter whether it's yours or somebody else's. Maybe even, and this is where it becomes a bit radical, it shouldn't matter whether it's your life or somebody else's life that's lost. It matters just as much, which is not a normal way to think about things. You may not agree with this poem, you don't have to. I'm not saying that I agree with it, it's a point of view. We're used to saying our own life is more important, we have to treat it as more important, or else how do we exist? And this poem is saying, perhaps there's another way to think of it. Each man's death diminishes me. Diminish makes less. Each man's death makes me less, because I am involved in mankind. So I'm all bound up in what mankind as a whole does. Therefore, send not to know for whom the... What does that mean? Send not to know. So how would you send to know? So that's a bit like saying... let's pick someone from the comments. Oi, Flame Gaming. Go and find out who that is who's died. Don't send Flame Gaming to find out who it is who's died, because you already know who's died. You have died. Because when somebody else dies, that's just like you or a part of you dying, because we're all bound up together as humanity. We're all part of one whole. So this is the kind of thing that you might hear a lot, or have heard a lot over recent decades, from people of a sort of, people who once have been called sort of hippie-ish, sort of one love kind of people who say, humanity, it's just one spirit, and it would seem a bit sort of airy-fairy and, new agey. But this is not that. This is from a Christian poet writing hundreds of years ago, saying very much that. We're all bound together. We're all part of one human whole, and every life affects every other life, and every death is a bit of a death for all of us. Now you can find other things to interpret, but that is my general reading of this poem and what it's trying to say. how we should think about life and death, but through thinking about death, how we should think about our place in the human race and what the human race means. Are we all just little islands doing our own things, or are we a big continent where everything that happens in one place affects every other place in one way or another? Okay, thank you very much, Chaotic Melon, saying Rob is a legend. I don't know whether I've quite earned that, but I'm honoured, and it certainly will encourage me through the rest of my COVID recovery. Excuse me, again. Right, okay, it's a good thing anyway that I started getting this thing last, Tuesday or Wednesday, and so I first started getting symptoms, and it's just timed nicely for the worst to be past and for me to be able to do this lesson, because what would you have done this evening without this live lesson to watch? Right, so I don't want to take too long here because I won't survive it, my voice won't survive it, and I'm also very tired, so let's get cracking. We've got two quotations to look at. Let's look at the first one. Explain carefully what you understand by the following quotations. No man is an island entire of itself. Now, because I'm very tired and my concentration is a bit iffy, I have done some preparation this week, so I'm not completely making this up. I have some answers that I whipped up shortly before this lesson, so I got something to go on. So I think the best way to start is by dealing with the quotation itself and then building out from that to other bits of the poem. Now, there's a difficult balancing act here, because what you don't want to do is talk about the whole poem, because the question asks you to talk about this quotation. So you need to stay focused on the quotation, but you should bring in those ideas from the rest of the poem that are necessary to explain this quotation, but not get sidetracked into ideas that are not necessary to explain this quotation. And it's a difficult balancing act. You could either have an answer that's much too short because it just translates the quotation without really explaining what it means in the poem. Or you could have an answer that waffles on forever because it basically explains the whole poem. You don't want either of those. You want an answer that brings in the relevant things that are needed to explain this. Now, excuse my handwriting in advance. Those who know these lessons know the sensory onslaught that's about to occur as I attempt to handwrite onto a glass screen. So, no man. So first of all, let's show that we understand this to mean no person. Nobody. Nobody, that's just about legible, I think. Nobody is. Now, if I said nobody is an island, I haven't really helped, because of course I'm not an island. I'm a bag of, flesh and liquid and all sorts of unpleasant things. So I'm not an island. Nobody is like an island. So that word like is actually very important because it shows understanding. Nobody is like an island. Okay, let's explain that. What does that mean? Nobody is like an island able to live separately. And now it's all falling apart. Able to live separately. And what does that mean? And unconnected from other people. And what's that got to do with being an island? That's to do with the sea between the islands. Able to live separately and unconnected, disconnected. Let's say disconnected. Disconnected. Because that's like the idea of cutting yourself off. Separately and disconnected from other people. As though cut off by the sea. So we're keeping focused on the island idea. We're showing that we're homing in on details in this quotation, and disconnected from other people, as though cut off by the sea. Okay. So that's already done a pretty good job with the first line. What does it mean? Entire of itself. Entire of itself. So we spoke about how being entire means being complete in ourselves. We aren't complete. And now let's show that we're focused on this quotation. So we can use brackets here just to drop a quotation in. We aren't complete. So that's like a sort of an arrow pointing to the word entire in the quotation. We aren't complete entire by ourselves. Okay, now some people would stop here but that's how you avoid getting all the marks. You need to add a bit of depth to this. What does this mean, that we aren't complete by ourselves? That isn't actually self-explanatory, because I am complete by myself. I'm in this room, I have my cough sweets, I have some water, which I'm going to take a drink of. The door is closed, my streaming setup is here. I don't need anybody else right now. I can do this. Well, I need you, because otherwise I'd just be talking into the void. But you know what I'm saying. But no, this poem is saying that even in this situation, I am still connected to other people. My life doesn't really have meaning without you. My life is meaningless without you. Flame Gaming, Legend, Bizola, Fagaroye, BK Patel 81, Shivani Chehetri. You know, without you, my existence at this moment is meaningless. We need other people to make us who we are. Robert Lomax, as the only person in the world, is a different Robert Lomax from the Robert Lomax who is seen and thought about and perceived in a certain way by other people, and by the way that I act and change myself to respond to those other people. Okay, so how can we build on this a bit? Well, one of the crucial ideas in this poem is that it contrasts being an island with being a continent. You can see that up there above my head. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. So I think without getting too sidetracked from this quotation, we can bring it in and show how it explains this idea of an island. So let's say that. Rather than being islands, people are like... Now, if I said part of a continent, what does that mean? The point is that we aren't islands, we're like countries in a continent. People are like countries in a... So I'm going to quote continent, even though it isn't from these lines, because it's highly relevant. Countries in a continent, all joined together, and what's the point? They're joined together, but also everything that each one does affects every other one. All joined together and affected by each other. And I think that's a really full explanation. Nobody is like an island, able to live separately and disconnected from other people, as though cut off by the sea. We aren't complete, entire, by ourselves. We need other people to make us who we are. Rather than being islands, people are like countries in a continent, all joined together and affected by each other. So that's quite a simple explanation, but it's really clear, and it deals with no man, what it means to be an island, what it means to be entire or not entire, and it explains what no man is by giving an idea from the poem of what we are instead, so that we understand what he's getting at, what John Donne is saying. By the way, you say Donne, not Don, just so you know, what John Donne is saying when he says that no man is an island entire of itself. Now, something else I want to point out about this answer. Look at the use of quotations. I've quoted the word island. I'll put that in quotation marks because it is a quote. I've quoted the word entire, and I've also quoted the word continent from later in the poem. What I haven't done is write, no man is an island entire of itself means that. And I haven't then said, entire of itself means that, blah, blah, blah. I've just explained it in my own words, dropping in really short, all one word quotations when necessary. And that means that everything I'm writing is earning marks as being my own contribution, rather than just being a repetition of what's in the quote. So quotations are really good, but keep them as short as possible, and never ever recycle the quotation or big chunks of the quotation. That's a mistake that people commonly make when dealing with questions like this. So I hope you'll be able to see the way that I have dealt with the details of the quotation and its overall meaning, but also thought about what it means in the broader context of the poem and brought that all together in a fairly succinct answer that doesn't even use the complete answer space. Right, onward to the next. I'll have a quick look at what's going on in the comments before we start on it. Reason to be cheerful is thinking about this very deeply. Some people might think that it's quite a codependent message. I think it's more like we all need each other as we're all part of the human species. I think you'd also have to look at the context. That's very interesting, but what's the distinction that you're drawing? Because when you say we all need each other as a part of the human species, isn't that a way of saying that we are, in a way, codependent? I think what you might be getting at is that you're saying it's not a negative thing that we're all weak and kind of hanging off each other. It's more a positive thing that as a species we can work together. Maybe that's what you're getting. I'm not quite sure what you're saying. I think you're tapping into some very, very interesting ideas there. So thank you for that contribution. Reasons to be cheerful. You're on fire. Reasons to be cheerful. You're saying this. This is from a very early period of the British Empire. Yes and no. Yes, I think fundamentally yes. But by the British Empire, what you're talking about at this time is really, being unpleasant in Ireland and that kind of thing. Not the British Empire with the capital E that understood itself as an empire that came later. But yeah, and what you're saying is there's an amusing contrast between this rather spiritual take on the idea of the sort of unity of humanity at the same time as England and Britain were on course to G themselves up to career around the world, murdering and conquering, and taking a very unspiritual view to the unification of the human race in a sense. I think that's absolutely right. But I think what you're homing in on there is the fact that different people can have very, very different opinions about similar issues at the same time. And even the same people can themselves be contradictory. But fantastic contribution, thank you. Right, I'm going to let Dimitri out, and then I'm going to have a go at answering this one. All right, boy, you can go out. Come on, Dima. Out you go. Don't you come in, Grigri, you'll just make trouble. So Dimitri wanted to go out, and Grigri wanted to come in, but if Grigri comes in, he'll be trampling over everything, smashing things, destroying, so I haven't let Grigri in on this occasion. Grigri is a cat you want in the room when you can supervise him, not necessarily when you're live streaming. Right, quick drink. Okay, send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for me, and I pull out my notes so I can pretend that I'm being fantastically inspired while in fact plagiarizing myself. Okay, so before I started with the image of the island, here this isn't a thing, this is a scenario, isn't this? A situation. The bell is tolling and you're wondering who it is, and you find out it's you it's tolling for. Oh, you should know that anyway, which is why you shouldn't send someone to tell you. So let's start by focusing on the actual situation that this is describing. So when you hear that someone's died, so that immediately shows understanding of what the bell tolling means. When you hear, oh, my handwriting is beautiful today. When you hear that someone has died, and let's make clear that we really understand the literal meaning of this. When you say that someone has died, for example, when you hear, I'm being repetitive, but never mind. When you hear funeral bells, I'm not sure it's necessarily bells at a funeral. I think the bell tolling might just be announcing the death, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to be too pedantic. When you hear funeral bells, your first thought shouldn't be to wonder who has died. Now, this handwriting may be terrible, but this is actually, for me, I think some of the best screen handwriting I've ever produced for you. I can actually read it, just about. That's quite incredible. I'm quite proud of myself. Right. Your first short thought shouldn't be to wonder who has died. Okay. So what should you wonder? We said what you shouldn't do, so it's logical to say what you should do. Instead, what should we do? Instead, we need to know that it's for us. But hang on, there's some explaining we need there. So instead, because all people are joined together, and that's context from the rest of the poem, you can't get that just from this quote, but you need it to explain this quote. Because all people are joined together. Okay, what does that mean? That means that every person's death takes something away from everybody. Yeah, because all people are joined together. And each person's death takes something away from everybody. You need to recognize that part of yourself has died. Okay, quite a long sentence there, but I think it's a good long sentence. Well, I would say that, but I think it works as a long sentence because it's tying everything together. And that's when you would choose to write a long sentence, when you've got various ideas that you want to show are connected. Instead, because all people are joined together and each person's death takes something away from everybody, you need to recognize that part of yourself has died. This, above all, is what you should feel sad about. Now, there's actually no quotation in this. I think that's okay, because I'm really clearly, obviously focused on the meaning of these lines, and I'm explaining them clearly, I think. When you hear that someone has died, for example, when you hear funeral bells, your first thought shouldn't be to wonder who has died. So that's send not to know for whom the bell tolls. Instead, because all people are joined together and each person's death takes something away from everybody, so that's all outside this quote. That's information from the rest of the poem that I brought in because it's necessary to explain it. You need to recognise that part of yourself has died, and that is, it tolls for thee. This, above all, is what you should feel sad about. And that isn't really in these lines. That's me explaining what these lines are kind of on about, what they mean. This raises some interesting questions for me. I mean, I think this is a beautiful poem. I don't find it completely satisfactory in some ways. So, for example, this way of responding to somebody else's death, of saying, hang on, I shouldn't worry about who it is who's died, because the main thing is that it's about me. Well, you could say that's wonderful, that's everyone being joined together. I can't get rid of the thought that on some level it's a bit selfish. If someone's died, that's a tremendous tragedy for them and for the people who love them and know them, for their family and so on. A tragedy for them that their life and all the things they hope to do, well, that's over. And this is, in some ways, you could read this poem as being how you take other people's tragedy and make them be all about yourself, which I think, if you look at it like that, is a pretty terrible attitude to life. other people's tragedies, there's a sense in which you need to respect them by accepting that they are other people's tragedies, that they don't belong to you. And I don't completely like this way of looking at it, while at the same time respecting it as something that's also quite radical and in its way quite wonderful. I also wonder how this really works. I'm a brutally pragmatic person, so I can sort of imagine John Donne sitting in somewhere in London maybe, and the bell goes and he's thinking, maybe that's some pauper from the next parish, and that's someone who was in the street who I won't see in the street every day. I walk down there now, even if I never really noticed them before, and in some small way that affects my life. Nowadays, though, if I imagine that somebody right now while I'm doing this live stream dies in Japan, I could say all these things about how their death affects me because we're all part of humanity. But does it actually make any difference at all in my life? Or am I kind of kidding myself if I say all this stuff here? Am I sort of pretending that we're more connected than we actually are? There's a lot to discuss in this. There's a lot to debate. There are a lot of questions about how this actually, how we could actually apply this philosophy to our lives, and whether we even should. And that's maybe something for you to go away and think about. I made it through both parts of this little paper. So I'm very pleased my voice has held up this far, but I don't want to push it too far. I'm going to have a quick look at the comments because I'm still able to talk. There are actually more people here than there were at the start, which is a sign of something good. Amen. Cannot read some of my handwriting. I have read both answers aloud though, so you can go back to where I read them aloud and work out what I wrote, but I apologise. I do my best, but my handwriting is appalling, and there's no way I can hide that. I write as neatly as I possibly can. Somebody says it's only been 32 minutes. Yep, it has. Isn't that marvellous? It's going to be a short lesson. I'm going to finish soon. And I need to. Well, that's going to get worse. Someone wants a shout out. I don't give shout outs when people ask, because otherwise everyone would just ask for them. And also because shouting is not something that's in my repertoire this evening. Lots of great comments. Fantastic. Okay, everybody. I am going to... Should I do a tip of the week? I need to come up with a tip first. I didn't even plan one because I thought I'd be coughing and spluttering by this point and there'd be no possibility of me giving a tip. Okay, I'm going to give a quick tip of the week. It's going to be a completely invented one. The tip of the week is for people who may not have been on this channel for very long, and they may think that this is about waiting for live lessons every Tuesday evening, which of course it is, because that's very exciting. What you may not know is that there is an absolutely enormous back catalogue of Easy 11 Plus lessons, literally hundreds of past Easy 11 Plus lessons, live lessons and short videos. You can find all of them on the channel, but here's the tip, and I know some people know this, but many don't. If you want a really easy way to find all my past lessons, go into the video description down below the video here. It's down there on YouTube. It's up there on Facebook, but most people watch on YouTube, and it's down there below. Open up the video description and you will see that there's a link to a magic file called Video List. And if you go to the file that's called Video List, there is a link to every single Easy 11 Plus video with a little description of what it's about, and a link to the worksheet that goes with the video. So then you can do the worksheet, watch the lesson, do the worksheet again, check your new answers against the lesson, do whatever you need to do to get really good at the skills in each lesson. So there's barely even any point in me doing the live lessons anymore, because there are so many past lessons covering pretty much every conceivable 11 plus topic and exam style. So go to town with that list, explore it. I'm not pretending that every lesson I do is wonderful, but there should be the odd diamond in the dung heap to help you for your 11 plus preparation. Okay, and that is my improvised tip of the week. And I think on that note, I am going to say goodbye. Thank you very much, Reasons to be Cheerful, for wishing me well. I too hope that I get well soon. I'm getting well. My COVID test today was just the tiniest faint line, so the infection is the infection is almost out of my body. I've just got the residual irritation and phlegm and all that nonsense. So thank you very much for your well wishes. There is no lesson next Tuesday because that's Tuesday I'll tell you what date it is. That's Tuesday the 5th of December, because I am going to be in London visiting some friends. In fact, I'm coming back next Tuesday evening, but there should be a live lesson the next Tuesday. So I will see you again for the next lesson on the 12th of December at 6 o'clock. Okay, everybody, it's been wonderful to have you here. Thank you for all your support through my coughing and your wonderfully kind comments about my handwriting. And I look forward to seeing you for the next lesson. That, again, is on the 12th of December. Bye-bye.